Ghosts of Harrenhal. My name's Simon.
And I'm Mackelly.
Thank you for joining us for episode 55 of our chapter-by-chapter book review of A Song of Ice and Fire by George Martin. Today we'll be discussing chapter 54 of A Game of Thrones. That's Dany 6.
And I'm going to bet you know the drill by now. We're going to chat about the chapter and try not to spoil any future plot points for you. And hopefully we'll provide you with some entertainment along our way.
You never know. Someone might be just dipping in.
That's right.
It's always possible. We'll summarise what's happened. We'll discuss our thoughts on it. We'll provide some useful background. We'll compare it to the television show. We will indulge in a little pedantry. And we'll cover some reader communications. Be sure to check out the show notes. They've got a little bit of extra information that will help you, particularly if you're not reading along with us. How are you?
I am doing all right. How about you?
Right, good. Yeah, I'm fine. The new dog's working out. She's accident free for maybe 2 whole weeks now.
All right. That's about 2 weeks longer than my Penny, and she's been here for more than 7 years now. So, so I had a dream Sunday night. It was technically Monday morning. It's what woke me up Monday morning. The background to the story is that Sunday Stacy decided it was spring cleaning day in the house, even though it's summer.
No time like the present.
And one of the things we uncovered was a bunch of old photo albums from, when the kids were little and stuff. Some predated Molly. And so we looked through those, and it was fun to reminisce. And then yesterday morning, I was having a dream that Ethan and I were sitting on the top stairs of my old house. You know how it kind of looked out over my living room, had the 2-story great room. And it was 5-year-old. It was like 5 or 6-year-old Ethan and I were sitting at the top of the stairs. And we were just kind of reminiscing about things that happened when he was little. Some of them I remembered. Some of them I think my subconscious may have just made up. But regardless, I said to him, all right, well, let's get going. And he looked at me and said, I have to stay here, Dad. And I was like, oh, you do? Little Ethan just lives in my memory now. And it woke me up this incredible sadness that that little boy is gone, it's just...
That is kind of sad right there. Good God.
Oh, man. I woke up,
I'm going to need a moment here.
I stared at him for a second, and then it dawned on me what he meant, and the just incredible sadness. I mean, I saw him later that day, so, sadness relatively speaking.
Was he sullen and annoying?
he was...
That'll ease the blow.
He was not, but he was looking for stuff. He came to retrieve some things and whatnot, so. But just oh my, that's right, my little boy is gone. He's replaced by a 20-year-old man who I love. He's a great kid.
I get you. But the thing is, think about it this way. A lot of people find themselves in the same situation as you. Kids have grown. When they do remember, they remember wistfully and fondly. You had a dream about it.
Yeah.
A lot of us don't get that.
That's true.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I did get to sit with
exactly.
little Ethan for a little bit there. Yeah.
And I can sit here and pretend, but that's not the same. You were buying into that because you were dreaming, yeah?
Yeah, that's a good point. I should look at it as a blessing instead of a sadness.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. The sadness was there anyway.
Yeah.
It just was thrown into sort of stark relief by the fact that you had a few moments of happiness.
Yes, and then he could not come with me because he lives only in my memories.
Oh.
So
it's very beautiful too. I mean, you should be proud of what your subconscious has done there.
Yeah.
It's very poetic.
You're helping me see this in a whole different light. Very helpful. Yesterday I could not. I was going to bed last night and I could still hear little Ethan say, "I have to stay here, Dad." Oh my gosh, it was. Whew. Anyway.
Well, I got something a bit more lighthearted.
Good.
For you.
Yes, let's hear it.
My son is doing Spanish at school.
Okay.
And of course, he isn't going to school. He's just sitting at the computer 10 feet away from me. And so I hear his Spanish teacher every morning. He has Spanish at 7:15 every morning.
So you sit in the next room taking notes and stuff, learning Spanish?
Well, I listen in. I'm learning a little bit, yeah. But the Spanish teacher, I don't know where he's from precisely, but he has a Spanish accent when he speaks English. He sounds like the actor who plays Sirio Forel.
Oh.
And he he continually, when he says "well done" to the kids, he says, "Oh, I've forgotten what he says." He says something like "good job," but he doesn't say "good job." He says "well." He uses the word "well" instead of "good." So he gets his English wrong every time he says it. But he says well job or something.
Yeah.
I'm getting that wrong, but that's what he says. I really want to tell him, you've got to say "just so."
Yes.
If you could say "just so," it would be so great. I would cheer every time you said it.
Yeah, you got to get that message through to him somehow.
Yeah. Buenos dias. Just so.
What happened to Chinese? Wasn't he taking Chinese, Lucas?
He took Chinese for 4 years, but that was then.
Right.
He got to the point. You know the story about the Chinese. He got to the point where in a Chinese restaurant he could really blow the waiters away.
Nice.
By suddenly, because in particular he could very fluently say, "Oh, can you point me to the bathroom?" And they would just go. Little Caucasian kid just spoke perfect Chinese, but that was almost all he could say. If they said anything back to him, it was like, yeah, no.
Yeah.
But he could say that completely convincingly.
But he's got that one phrase he sounds fluent in.
All right, let's get on with the show.
Let's do it.
Last time we saw Dany Targaryen, it was at the untimely but not entirely unwelcome death of her older brother Viserys at the hands of her husband Khal Drogo. She's pregnant, and the Dosh Khaleen have prophesied, in light of her chowing down on an entire raw horse's heart, that her child will be the stallion who mounts the world, the long foretold Khal of Khals, who will unite the Dothraki into a single great Khalasar. So why don't we give them the summary of what happened in this chapter?
All right. In news and notes, I have something about her chowing down on that raw horse's heart.
You do?
I do.
I'm excited.
I had a conversation with a pro.
Really?
Yes, I did.
I'm looking forward to this.
A chow down pro.
I should probably have read the notes before.
Why not? You'll be a spectator. You can sit back and listen. Okay, so Dany takes the opportunity of a post-coital reverie to nudge Khal Drogo about helping her to win back the Iron Throne. He is not interested. His son can be the stallion who mounts the world without crossing the sea. As far as he is concerned, the world ends there. Dany, being smarter than Viserys, doesn't push it. But she reckons if she could just get him onto a ship, he'd be sold on the idea. Drogo announces his intention to go hunting and leaves her.
She calls for her handmaidens, on whom she's increasingly reliant as her pregnancy progresses, and she also calls for Jorah Mormont, and he explains that the Khal cannot imagine Westeros. He probably thinks of it as a collection of worthless islands, but he promises that they will get home eventually. He informs her that a large caravan has arrived and set up in the Western Market. There'll be interesting things to see and do. She arranges for a litter. She rides in front of her husband, but she, again, not Viserys, isn't a complete idiot.
The Eastern Market is fabulous and interesting, but it's the Western Market that stirs thoughts of home. She recalls playing in the bazaars when she was young and loving the vibrancy of it. Jorah says he'll go see the captain of the caravan to see if there are any letters, and Dany offers to come, but Jorah, for once, eschews her company. Dany is curious about that, and wonders if he's going to find female companionship afterward.
Dany finds a sausage stall and is very excited, but they don't taste as good as she recalls. They substituted horse meat for pig, which perhaps accounted for some of it. Yep. Her handmaidens and her cast are very impressed, though. A wine cellar with the gift of the gab interests them. He touts his wares in fluent Dothraki, but when Dany asks for a taste in Valyrian, he switches tongue and his tune about how good the Dornish summer wine would have been.
Instead, he wants her to have a cask of a fine Arbor Red on him. Khal Drogo likes good wine, so she's happy to accept. But at this point, Ser Jorah arrives back on the scene, and he smells a rat. He demands to try the wine. The merchant gets a bit shifty, and the Khals form a circle. Dany grows suspicious and insists that he try it himself. Instead, he hurls the cask at her and makes a run for it. The lack of weapons give him a chance, but Drogo's whip brings him down.
Mormont knocks Dany down to avoid the cask, and with Doreah's help she avoids landing on her belly. The merchant captain, Bian Votiris, is mortified that he's brought her assassin and apologizes profusely, gifting her all the doomed man's wine. The assassin himself is taken before Khal Drogo. Back at the camp, Jorah shows her the letter from Illyrio Morpartis to Viserys, of course, who is no longer there,
Right.
with intelligence that King Robert has offered a lordship for the death of either of the Targaryens. Dany half laughs that the usurper owes Khal Drogo a lordship.
That is quite ironic, isn't it? Dany feels suddenly inspired. The usurper has woken the dragon. She sends Mormont away and puts her dragon eggs in the fire. They glow strangely, but as the fire dies down, they return to their former state. Drogo returns with some new scars and the carcass of a white lion, and when he learns of what's happened, he gives Drogo and Mormont any horse they want, plans a pitiful ending for the poisoner, and gives Dany what she wants. The Khalasar will go to Westeros.
The chapter ends with the Khalasar headed west with the wine merchant tied naked to the back of Silver. He just has to keep up.
Yeah, that might prove difficult after a while.
After a few thousand miles, yeah. Although you'd think his feet will toughen up.
In time.
So, yes, exciting chapter. Good stuff.
Yeah.
So it starts with Dany pleading her case for why they should go to Westeros, which is what Viserys wanted.
Right.
But Dany is just a much better diplomat and knows how to bide her time and when to bite her tongue.
Yeah. But like we said in the summary, Drogo is totally uninterested in such a plan, which is something we had discussed at the I think at the end of last episode about Dany, is whether this mounts the world prophecy would inspire Drogo to take the Khalasar across the Narrow Sea to Westeros, or would he just consider the world to be basically Essos? And looks like that's his original thinking there, is that the world ends where the land ends.
Yeah, that is interesting. There's a couple of things to unpick there, because, of course, he made a deal with Viserys.
Yep.
And now, presumably, Jorah Mormont has consistently said they don't understand a contract the way we do, so don't think of this as being a quid pro quo sort of thing. But I'm sure on some levels he did understand that. Khal Drogo did understand, you've given me this in return for that, I need to give you that at some point.
Yep.
But now that he's killed Viserys, maybe he thinks, well, that contract is over and done with, so I have no more need to go there. And just because his wife is expressing an interest, is like, oh, I don't care, I like you. I'm not breaking with every tradition of the Dothraki just because I like you,
Yeah. So the tradition that you're referring to is Dothraki think that if a horse can't drink the water, then it's foul, and it can't drink the salty water of the Narrow Sea. So
yeah, the other thing I was thinking about was the prophecy might work against Dany here, because the prophecy saying he's going to be the stallion that mounts the world, well, start by taking all of Essos. You know what I mean? That could put you back 20 years. If this was true. Plus, the child is still in utero.
So there's still some wait to even get started on this prophecy. Yeah.
Yes, so you're going to wait for him to grow up, and then 20 years for him to take Essos, and then they'll cross the Narrow Sea. So,
right, because they didn't say Khal Drogo was going to mount the world. They got to wait for Rhaego to reach full maturity.
Yeah, Khal Drogo will die conquering the whole of Essos, and they'll say, "Over to you, son. Take care of your mom's homeland."
Yeah. The wording. What the wording here? He says, "No horse can cross poisoned water." That made me think that I interpreted that as he never really did have the intention of giving Viserys the army, because he does not believe that the horses can cross the water. So
yeah, he must know of the existence of boats.
Yes, and that's the thing. That was the other thing. She says to him, she's trying to explain to him this concept of boats, and she said, in the free cities, there's ships by the thousands. And then she says, she tries to give him like an analogy, wooden horses with 100 legs that fly across the sea. And I thought, he has a manse in Pentos. He has to be familiar with the concept of ships. I'm no expert on Pentosi geography, but I would think he has seen a few ships in his day in the harbor.
Perhaps, yeah. Maybe he thinks they're just sea creatures.
Those things.
Swim out and get one of those. Could be handy.
So Drogo's plan instead is to lead the Khalasar east after Rhaego's birth. And That's when he announces, "I'm done. We're not talking about this anymore. I'm going hunting." He's going after the this special white lion that apparently roams the Dothraki Sea. And so she goes and has Ser Jorah fetched to her, and she says, he wants to go east, but I want him to go west. We have to figure out how to get him to go west. And he says, I think you alluded to it in the summary, that if Drogo thinks about the Seven Kingdoms at all, which he doesn't even know that he does, he thinks of them as just, group of islands with small cities similar to Lyce. Rather, the East, he knows about what's in the East, and there's riches in the East that he's aware of, and so it's a much bigger draw to go east than to west.
Yeah. So Dany starts to rationalise, well, maybe this isn't so bad. Maybe I just give up my pretensions to the Iron Throne. I'm a Khaleesi, got a husband that I love, best horse imaginable, handmaidens who she's friends with, and, she's got a son on the way who's supposed to be the bee's knees.
Yep, that should be good enough for any woman, but not the blood of the dragon, she thinks.
Yeah. But I wonder if this chapter had not panned out the way it did, she would have gone east.
Yeah.
I think she'll always yearn for the West, but I think she's found her home,
I agree. Yeah. She considers herself the last seed of kings and conquerors, and so therefore can't settle for just the nice life of a Khaleesi. She has to seek out her birthright, I guess. But You're right, though. I think if Khal Drogo had gotten back and was like, "Wow, that was a rough day you had. Oh well, you don't have to worry about those folks anymore because we're going east anyway." She would have settled into a nice life as a Khaleesi.
So Mormont brings news that they've got this the caravan has arrived to set up a market in the Western Market, and we hear what Dany thinks of the Eastern markets. There are two markets in Vaes Dothrak, and the Eastern Market is full of very exotic things, sort of animals that she'd never seen before, and spices and activities that are alien to her. So she feels the draw of the Western markets. They make her remember her childhood in the free cities of Essos, which are much more like Westeros. The goods, the peoples are much more Westerosi over there.
Yeah, certainly more so than the Eastern Essos. Yeah. They're just separated by the narrow sea on the western side of Essos.
One thing she was looking forward to was trying the sausages that she remembered from her childhood, and she does find a stall that sells them, but the lady selling them says that the pigs all died on the way, so they're now made from horse meat. The Dothraki are thrilled. They think it's the most delicious thing they've ever had.
She's slightly disappointed, but they are like, wow, these are fantastic. I think Jogo and one of the other cows have an eating contest over them. But this sentence, when she says they taste different, and the lady who makes them explains that her pigs died on the journey, I wondered, why make the journey if it's so long and hard that your livestock all die?
Yeah, I know where you're going here, because they say in the chapter that the Dothraki don't really understand buying and selling.
Yeah.
So you're not going to make a profit out of this particularly.
Right.
And
so that's the thing. The only reason to take this dangerous trek is because the goods from the other market, like the Eastern market, are rare and valuable enough that if you can do some trading and pick up some of those, you can take them back.
Make a profit when you come back, right?
It's got to be at least enough to make up a year's worth of income plus expenses, because it's a long haul to get from the free cities to Vaes Dothrak.
I wonder, as a sausage merchant, if she was employed by Bian Vortiris to feed them along the way, and so maybe that covered some of her costs.
That's a good point.
But I take your point. I mean, the whole idea of these markets seems very difficult to sort of countenance.
Yeah.
What's in it for people? If the Dothraki don't buy from you. If the Dothraki bought from you, sure. The Dothraki are rich, relatively speaking.
Right.
If you could get some things out of the Dothraki, as well as trading with the people from the other side of the continent, that makes it worthwhile.
Yeah. The whole Dothraki trade system doesn't seem like a great deal for the merchants. I mean,
Pretty good for the Dothraki.
Yeah, there doesn't seem to be any guarantee of a return value that you're looking for. Like, Dany keeps taking things. The description refers to her taking scented oils and taking a fertility charm. And in those instances, there's no mention of what she gave back. She does get a feathered cloak from the Summer Isles from a trader, and she gives him a medallion. So at least there's one time when we know she traded something with him, but it just doesn't seem like you know what you're going to get back. You basically are going to get back whatever the Dothraki feel like it's worth,
Right. Yeah.
So.
And really, in Vaes Dothrak, they have the upper hand here.
Yes.
They're hardly going to be able to say, well, believe me, I'm off to the Dosh Khaleen to complain about your behavior. One medallion?
Yeah. This whole market in Vaes Dothrak thing, I think it's based on the Mongol capital of Karakorum, which was, I know, I went down a few rabbit holes with this during this chapter.
Research, ladies and gentlemen.
Yes.
Research.
And in fact, a lot of the Dothraki the Dothraki culture and the descriptions about the Dothraki seem to be based a lot on Mongols and Huns.
Huh.
So, like, Huns...
Yeah, I can see that. I can imagine that.
The Huns are, I was looking up a little bit about them, and they were known for their horseback archery skills, much like the Dothraki are. So, yeah.
Interesting. So, Jorah blows off Dany to go and track down the letters that he assumes Viserys will have for him.
Yeah.
We know he's on the payroll somewhere else. And he's a little bit shifty as he leaves, which is unusual for him because he's a straight shooter. So it alerts Dany. She's like, why is he doing this? And she puts it down to, well, maybe he's got a lady or he's going to pay for a lady.
Right.
And he's a bit embarrassed to admit it to her.
I feel like this whole thing here with him inviting her and then blowing her off is sending some serious mixed message vibes here. Why invite her if he's just going to bail on her anyway? Why not just go get the letter and then come back? She said that she was sad, and he saw that she was sad and suggested, hey, you want to come to the market with me? I'm going to go pick up a letter. But he put her in some serious harm's way by doing so.
Well, she was with the cast. I mean,
yeah.
They're her bodyguards, first and foremost.
Yeah, I wondered if maybe at this point he was still undecided about his loyalty. And so he
sort of depended what was in those letters.
Yeah. So he put her in a position of trouble, maybe, and then was like, "Oh, I can't do this. I've got to go save her. I don't want her to be killed, even if it means I get a pardon and a lordship." Because if he was staunchly in the Dany camp ahead of time, you'd think he would have gotten the letter first, and then if he wanted to cheer her up by taking her to the market, he would have stuck to her like glue, or keep her out of the market, saying it's not safe, after he explained to her what was in the letter, as she was only there because Jorah suggested it.
I am going to disagree with you on this across the board. I think it's perfectly reasonable. I mean, we don't know the distance from Khal Drogo's camp to the Western Market. It might be a bit of a schlep. It might not be something you could easily do twice a day.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. That's true.
He, like you said, I want to cheer her up. I'm going to take her to the market. He probably said, I'll go see if the guy's got letters for us, not thinking she would want to come along, not thinking he had to be shifty about it. I think you could be perfectly in Dany's camp and not want Dany to see you getting those letters.
Yeah.
Because if those letters say, hey, thanks for spying on Dany Targaryen for us, you've got a pardon, that might, even if you go, well, I don't want that, it's too late. Yeah.
Right. Nothing to see here, nothing to see here.
Exactly. So I don't think he transitioned here from one side to the other. I think he wanted to get those letters in private, and he made himself look suspicious by doing so. Because, hey, when you're doing something shifty, you look suspicious. It's inevitable.
Yeah, that's certainly how. That's like the main way to look at it. I was just trying to think of like what else could be going on here.
You're saying I've got no imagination, is that it? That I can't read subtext. This is what you're getting at.
I'm just thinking, maybe he pulled the hero move here. You know, he put her in harm's way so that then he could come in and save the day, bolster his position in her eyes a little bit. Like, you're my hero, and Khal Drogo is now in your debt. And really, he knew this was coming. Maybe it said in the letter, there's a wine merchant.
Well, it did, but then he didn't have the letter until he left her.
Yeah.
So he didn't... If he had the letter and it said, that wine merchant's gonna get her, then he left her to talk to the wine merchant, and then he swooped back in, yes.
Yeah.
But he didn't have the letter until he left her to her own.
That's true, yeah. I just don't get why necessarily... If he was suspicious that someone might be trying to off her...
But he was... All right. First of all, you're a bodyguard. You're suspicious that everyone's trying to off her, right?
Yeah.
Second of all, he's just opened a letter that says there's a lordship for anyone who kills her. That is going to make you suspicious of everyone.
Right.
Your bodyguard spidey sense is going to tingle.
You would think so at that point.
Right. So, yeah, I'm curious if he got more than one letter. I mean, that's the thing. I mean, you see, he goes off because he's not sure what the letters are going to be.
Yeah.
Now, the only one he admits to getting was a letter from Mopatis to Viserys, which obviously he felt he could open without any problems at all. And sure enough, it's a good job he did, because the spidey sense tingled and he saved her from drinking poison wine.
Mm-hmm.
But did he get anything else?
Yeah.
Did he get a letter for himself? Because he is, his original motives for being a part of the Khalasar was to get a pardon to get back to Westeros.
Yeah. Now, if you remember back in the chapter where Ned came in and saw Robert gored, and then he was having the conversation outside of the room, and he told Varys, cancel the killing Dany thing. It's off. And he said, I'll try, but those birds have flown. It's possible that there was a second letter that said, prevent this from happening, but seems...
Oh, true. Although...
It seems unlikely that's the reason for his reversal of his plan. It seems more likely that he has just kind of fallen, if not in love, he's very fond of Dany, very protective of her.
I do have an explanation now for why travelers would make the arduous journey to Vaes Dothrak to trade on bad terms. They are basically carrying messages from Varys countermanding the previous caravan's orders.
There's another caravan coming tomorrow. Could be. That could be it.
So, the question for me in the end of this chapter is, has he completely turned? I mean, obviously, if he got news that, hey, you're doing great work, if you can just get rid of that last Targaryen, you're back in the good books here in Westeros, then he could have just turned a blind eye here.
Yeah.
It's a pretty, it wasn't an instantaneous thing. It's not like he let someone stab her.
Right.
This was like a drinking poison wine later on. Would easily have slipped the net. Nobody else but him was suspicious.
Right. Yeah. He could have even, if he wanted to not put anyone on guard, he could have let her take the wine and then accidentally spilled it or something like that, and be like, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I'll replace that for you."
Well, but there's the hero thing. He definitely wants to be seen to be the one to. I don't want to come across as a clumsy oaf. I want to come across as the savior,
the conquering hero. Yeah. I personally think he had turned before this. I was just trying to come up with a counter argument for that idea earlier.
Yeah, and it's reasonable because again, he's still got reason to be shifty about what's in those letters, even if he is 100% Team Dany.
Yeah.
Because if those letters say, here's the pardon.
Could be very damning what's in those letters.
One thing to think back on with the nature of this attempted murder is what Peter Baelish told Ned Stark about the plan. Peter Baelish said that by offering a lordship, he was guaranteeing that ill-trained idiots would try to kill her.
Yeah.
And that they would fail and her guard would be increased and she'd be safer as a result.
Yep.
And full marks to Baelish, because that's what's happened here.
Yeah, exactly. He nailed it. And so now we go back to what Varys and Illyrio Mopatis are plotting. So it seems an awful lot, based on the things we've heard, that their plot involves a Targaryen return to the throne. So was this all a master plan? Did they think Drogo is not going to want to go back? He's not going to want to go to Westeros. We need to force him. So if we have a botched attempt on Dany, then maybe that will force his hand.
Not force him, but inspire him.
Yes, exactly.
To say,
inspire him.
You know what?
Yeah.
Those people are attacking my wife. I'm going to go and kick their backsides. Yeah. Yeah, no, I like that as a theory, because Varys obviously is playing multiple levels here.
Yeah.
He sent the assassins. He sent the cancellation of the assassins. He wants the Targaryens back.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a bold move. It's like a queen sacrifice right there.
Right, yeah. That sounds like a bold move. Queen sacrifice.
That's a bold move.
But it now makes sense why he was on Robert's side at the small council meeting, way back when Ned and Robert were at odds about whether or not to kill Dany. Because aside from keeping on Robert's good side and staying employed as the Master of Whispers, it seems like that possibly he and Illyrio knew that when Illyrio brokered the Dany-Drogo marriage, that Dany would need the push. So, or not that the Drogo would need the push. And he also knew that Robert would react when he found out that they were married and that she's pregnant, that he would want to have her killed to protect his throne.
Feels like there might be easier ways to do this, but yeah, I mean, it's excellent plotting if that's what they're doing. I mean, for instance, if you could tell Khal Drogo, you can take Westeros quite easily because your Dothraki are fearsome fighters and the people of Westeros are lazy and won't fight you, and there's enormous wealth here.
That would have been another way, yeah.
That's the bit I would try to convince him with, especially now that Viserys is out of the way. Because now Viserys is out of the way, who's in line for the throne? Well, Dany.
Yeah.
Dany and her husband, so they would be king and queen of Westeros.
Yeah. I don't think that. I'm not sure if it would have been quite enough for Drogo. I think Drogo would be fine with just forgetting about Westeros until now.
Yeah.
Like I don't need to go across the sea there. It's not necessary.
Yeah.
But he.
Yeah, and you know what? I mean, he loves the nomadic life on the horse. I mean, Westeros is not the same.
Yeah.
It doesn't have the Dothraki sea. He may literally be less happy, even though he would be more powerful and rich. He may be less happy.
Yeah, that's true. So when they get back into Vaes Dothrak, back into Dany's little home there, and Drogo comes back and he hears what happens, he rewards Drogo and Jorah the Andal for their part in thwarting the attack. And he refers to Jorah as Jorah the Andal. And that nickname is a little bit not quite accurate. The nickname comes from him being from Westeros. But Andals originated in Andalos, which is here on Essos. But also, Bear Island is in the north, where the blood of the first men is heavily prevalent. So on multiple levels, he is likely not of Andal descent. But he was knighted by Robert, so he said his vows to the new gods, which were brought by the Andals to Westeros. So, maybe because he's a knight, they think he must have Andal descent.
It's more good analysis. I like it. So, Drogo, I think pretty much every married guy has been in this same situation. You come home with something exciting like the carcass of a white lion that you've just killed, and it turns out your wife's had a terrible day, and you've got to pretend you're not excited, and you've got to... So, yeah, he gets really fired up. He's like, I will kill the men in the iron suits and tear down their stone houses. I'll rape their women, take their children as slaves, bring broke gods back to Vaes Dothrak. I've had to say the same things to Carson.
All you wanted to show her was your new lion that you've killed. Instead, you got to threaten to take children as slaves. But, I was picturing when I read this, I was picturing Dany and Jorah going, well...
I don't need all those things.
How about 2 of the 5? I don't know. It's a long ride. We'll hammer out the details later. But the thing is that's exactly what will happen. If he takes his Khalasar to Westeros, and they're successful, that's what's going to happen.
Oh yeah,
So
lots of killing, lots of raping.
yeah,
That's their game plan.
so if Dany has visions,
she may like him, but she's turning a blind eye to some of his traits.
exactly, yeah. If Dany has visions of being like a loved, benevolent queen regent while Rhaego is growing up, and followed by a similarly loved Rhaego, I'm not quite sure that's how that's going to work out.
It may need them to take Westeros, and then for her to say to Khal Drogo, you know what? You go have a couple of years riding on the Dothraki Sea.
That's right.
Go do what you want. Go do the things you love the best.
Remember when I ruined that lion pelt for you? Go get me another one.
Exactly. Meanwhile, I'll stay here and try and repair the damage you've done.
Right. But I do need you to leave some of those children slaves back behind here. I'll take care of them. Don't worry. Yeah. I will take care of them. But then they leave, after he makes this proclamation, they leave Vaes Dothrak 2 days after the incident, and it seemed to me like waiting until after Rhaego's birth might have been the smarter play there, rather than to have the birth of this child out on the road.
She's a Dothraki.
She's not.
She's a 14-year-old Targaryen. Yes, I take your point, yes. So, one thing that I noticed, look, I'm not saying this is how I want to die. Tied by a rope to the back of a horse, stark naked. Me, not the horse.
Right.
As we're marching 2,000 miles across the plains. That's a horrible way to die. But if you remember, the small council were talking about how awful it would be for an assassin to get captured by the Dothraki.
Yep, I recall.
It seems a little bit tame, honestly,
yeah,
by comparison to the...
Little bit of a letdown.
Just a tiny bit, that's all I'm saying.
I think if the Boltons had caught him, it would be a worse
exactly.
fate.
They would have peeled his skin off and then made him walk behind the horse. When we mean naked, we mean naked.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, it was a little bit of a letdown.
So yeah, I mean that's all very interesting stuff. I mean, and obviously, it's a pivotal moment in the story because we needed this trigger to get the Dothraki headed west because it was just not going to happen organically. We needed something like this, and if this was Varys' plan, bravo, sir, bravo, well played.
That is quite the plan if he planned it down to this level of detail.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You got any background?
I do. I'm gonna probably ruin trying to say these names here. Do you see the names that I have to try and say?
I'm looking at them now. Yeah, good luck. I'm glad this is yours, not mine.
So the sister cities of Kayakayanaya, Bayasabad, and Cimmeriana are located on the eastern side of the Bone Mountains, near the Grand Sand Sea. That's on the very far eastern portion of Essos. The cities are ruled by the Great Fathers, and from an early age the girls of the city are trained as warriors. The prevailing theory is that only those who give birth are permitted to take life at will. As Dany points out in this, we didn't talk about it, but she describes the warriors that are in the Eastern Market, and they wear iron rings in their nipples and rubies in their cheeks, and they ride horses and are trained with bow, knife, sling, and spear. On the other hand, the boys of these cities don't have such a prestigious life. 99 out of 100 are gelded when they reach the age of manhood and serve as cooks, craftsmen, farmers, priests, and so on and so forth. That promising 1 out of 100, they grow to become the Great Fathers. These 3 cities were once part of the patrimony of Hyrrocoon and founded by the patriarch of Hyrrocoon. Well, that's some background we'll get into another day, but the thing about them is that there is some serious bad blood between these sister cities and the Jogos Nhai. So
yeah, I was going to talk about the Jogos Nhai, but talking about these sister cities, so it's an interesting model they've got because if presumably the guy who gets the 1 out of 100 who doesn't get gelded is selected for his superior attributes. He is tall and strong and
smart,
intelligent. Yeah. And so by doing that, they basically selective breeding. It's like it's like a stud farm,
Right.
You know.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a good point. I hadn't thought about it that way, but yeah.
Wow. So yeah, I had the we're mentioning these eastern regions because as Dany recounts what she sees in the eastern market, she talks about various eastern realms, and the Jogos Nai are a tribe also from the eastern side of the Bowen Mountains and rivals to the sister cities. They ride striped horses known as zorses, which they bred from horses, and it doesn't actually say what they bred them from, but presumably it was what we would call zebra or zebras. As infants, their heads are bound, and as a result, their adults have pointy heads.
Okay.
Which is a fascinating thing.
It is, yeah.
Like the Dothraki, they're nomadic and warlike, but they're shorter. They don't grow as tall. They are forbidden to fight with one another. The Dothraki don't mind fighting each other. They have fun doing it.
Yeah.
But the Jogos Nai don't fight one another. Instead, they raid and fight with their neighbours, including the sister cities. They don't form large Khalasars. They live in small family groups and sort of move around nomadically in those small groups.
Good stuff.
So that's the Jogos Nai. So comparison with the television show. There's a few interesting things about this one. All of it's pretty much in place. The scene where Drogo refuses Dany's request, she's plaiting his hair. It's not post-coital like it was in the book.
Okay.
So interestingly, they took an opportunity to clothe them instead of unclothe them.
Yeah. Unusual for the TV show.
Right. But I also think it's they're perhaps portraying the relationship as developing, you know what I mean? Because I think to this point in the TV show, it's been a lot of like sex.
Yeah.
And now it's showing them just spending time together,
right?
Because they want to. So I think there's some of that. In the market, when Jorah goes his separate ways from Dany, before he gets the letters, in fact, there's no mention of the letters in the show at all. A child says Jorah the Andal and hands him a note, and we are led to assume that note is the pardon from Westeros that he was looking for.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
There is no White Lion, no hunting trip, but the scene where Drogo learns of the assassin's attempt on Dany's life, and where Drogo then promises Dany that Rhaego at least will get the Iron Throne, is one of my absolute favourite scenes in the first series. It's Jason Momoa's finest hour. It's where basically the wine cellar is tied up to a pole in the room, and Jason Momoa and Khal Drogo marches around the room yelling at the top of his voice. The monologue is fantastic. And of course it's all in Dothraki, so it sounds terrific as well. And he promises her that he'll go across the Poison Sea and get her at the Iron Throne. And the whole time he's strutting and pounding his chest and rending his, oh, it's fantastic. And he shouts in the wine cellar's face, and that wine cellar is not acting. He is terrified. He's like, it's absolutely brilliant scene. So
easiest acting gig that actor has ever had.
Oh yeah, for sure. And we do indeed get to see all of the wine merchant's wares as he struggles to keep up with Dany's silver.
All right,
because he is stark naked. So, Pedantry Corner. I love Pedantry Corner, and we've had several positive comments about Pedantry Corner recently, so I'm glad we're doing it.
Yeah.
I have a very good one here, I think.
Okay.
So, the markets of Vaes Dothrak aren't precisely what you'd expect. The Dothraki, as we've said, don't really get the idea of buying and selling. So, the point of the markets is for trade between East and West. The caravans come in from the west and they trade with the caravans from the east.
Yep.
And that's the point. There are two markets in Vaes Dothrak, the eastern market and the western market. Dany's description of them has all the goods from the far east in the eastern market and all of the goods from the west in the western market. Doesn't that defeat the purpose? If you're trying to trade with the other side, wouldn't it be better to have one market where you all come?
It sure would make things more convenient.
Right.
Yeah, instead they got to traipse back and forth across however long of a distance. Maybe it's just like a row that delineates the eastern from the western.
Oh, I see. I see. Okay, well maybe that's all right. Yeah, it
Uh,
didn't sound like that.
I definitely get what you're saying. Although there's one mentioned in this chapter where a Yeti trader is haggling with a Pentashi that Dany's watching. So they must mingle back and forth.
Right.
But it's
Of course, it must happen. I get it. But wouldn't it be easier if the ET trader was saying to the Tyroshi, "Here are my goods that I would like to trade," rather than, "Oh well, if you come like
Right.
4 miles that way, I'll show you my goods." It's like, come on.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about that. That's solid pedantry right there. I was thinking that it seems awfully industrious for a culture that deals primarily in favor for a favor transactions to be the hub location for these two huge markets. Now, I get it's a convenient location for where the East and the West would meet because it's somewhat centralized. But the Dothraki are not even the primary customer base, so why would they be interested in allowing these foreigners into their only and sacred city? So, I mean, so I know the traders have to give the Dosh Khaleen gifts of salt, silver, and seed, but that doesn't seem like it would be sufficient to make them. Well, what's in it for them? Why would they bother doing this?
Well, I guess maybe you think of it in terms of, so if this was a trading city, like, at a hub, and they themselves were just ordinary traders, it would be like they were charging sort of like a customs or an excise duty on the trades that were going on in their city. The Dothraki just do it by stealing, because they can.
Right, yeah.
And geographically, it is the centre point between the east and the west of the continent, and so it does make sense that it would happen there. And maybe the traders are just like, you know what, if this was in Tyrosh, the harbour master would claim 10% of what we were trading anyway. It's no different really here.
Yeah.
So maybe it makes sense.
Yeah.
But, and the Dothraki do benefit from the stuff that they nick.
That's a good point. They do get to basically take whatever they want and give back whatever they feel like giving back, if anything, apparently.
Exactly. So I have one more, actually. I have the wine seller is really impressed that the Khaleesi knows Valyrian, and he hears her Tyroshi accent. But Doreah steps in to tell him that he's talking to Daenerys Stormborn of House Targaryen before he drops to his knees and offers her the poisoned wine. What kind of assassin doesn't know or can't spot the silver-haired pregnant Khaleesi in the western market of Vaes Dothrak?
A crackpot one. That was that was Littlefinger's whole plan. They won't be very good assassins.
Maybe he circulated a picture of like some dark-haired fat Khaleesi. This is the woman we're after.
She did think when he was so shocked that he must not have recognized her because of the oils in her hair and her tanned skin from being out and riding for so long. But yeah, you're right. He does say to her when he first sees her, a taste for the Khaleesi. So he must have a hunch that she's a Khaleesi.
Maybe just because she was surrounded by the cast.
Yeah.
Maybe that was
so maybe I'm guessing maybe he was just looking for a confirmation before switching to the poison wine, so he's not poisoning every single person. Could that be Dany? Could that be Dany?
It's when he unfolded the scroll and held it up against her. That's what tipped Jorah off. He was like, "Wait a minute!
Could you turn your head to the left just a little bit?" Yeah.
Okay. News and notes. We by the time you hear this, we will have made the draw for the Jon Snow Funko Pop, but we haven't yet because it isn't the end. We haven't reached the time when we said we would do it. So I hope you won.
That's right. We will know. It'll be announced next episode. We just have we're recording before the 31st, so apologies that it has not been announced yet.
Now I've seen your notes, and I'm very excited by what you're about to say. This is excellent.
So remember I mentioned earlier that I had some news and notes about Dany eating her 8-pound horse heart with nothing but her hands and her teeth. So you may remember back in that episode we referenced watching a professional eater eat, it was I think 3 72-ounce steaks with all the sides and everything. And so that professional eater, she's actually a world record holder. Her name's Molly Schuyler.
I know I mentioned it at the time, but I went to that restaurant and I read a guidebook and it said, don't try it. It said, you think you can do it, you really can't.
You're wrong.
You're nowhere near. And she did it three times in one sitting.
You could see it. I think I shared it on Twitter back in that episode. I'll share it again for this episode, but it's impressive.
Amazing to watch. Yeah.
So I caught up with her through Twitter, through direct messages. We chatted for a little bit. And I asked her about Dany eating the 8-pound horse heart with nothing but her hands and teeth. And she had a few thoughts. One, she thought it not likely possible. And also kind of gross.
and this is Molly Schuyler talking.
She's, and then she thought that even if it was 8 pounds of cooked steak, it would likely take someone who knows what they're doing to down that 8 pounds of meat.
No kidding. So, 8 pounds is a lot.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
So Dany must really have been on her game here.
I need you to go back to Molly Schuyler and say, how does someone get to know what they're doing?
Yeah.
I mean, I get you need to know what you're doing, but what is it you're doing? I mean, like, how is this possible? Because Molly Schuyler is not a big human being.
In fact, I kind of went down a rabbit hole about that stuff as well. Bigger people usually have more fat in their stomach, so there's not as much expansive room for their stomachs to expand. So it's the skinnier people of the professional eaters who are usually the better. Like her, if you see a picture of her, she's a very thin woman, and yet she can put away the food. It's impressive.
Yeah, she can. Well, yeah, there you are, you see. So never mind your 700-foot wall being too tall. Eating a raw 8-pound heart is stupid.
At least, give her one ventricle of the heart,
Maybe. Or share it with her husband. Can they between them do it?
Right. Tag team. Give them a certain deadline that they have to have it eaten by. All right.
So let's conclude. Yeah. Well, really, thanks for doing that. I'm very excited we know somebody famous. As famous as Molly Schuyler.
She was cool. Yeah, she seems like a pretty cool lady.
She sounds cool. And of course, we have a shared account, so it could have been me.
That's right.
She might think I'm cool. Yeah, okay, I'm good.
And she hates marshmallows like I hate marshmallows. So,
really?
Yes.
What a strange thing to not like.
I don't mind the little ones like in Lucky Charms. I don't like the big fluffy white ones.
Well, you stick a few of those in your mouth, it's going to be unpleasant, but you don't have to do that.
You don't.
Strange thing. You're a strange person,
I've been told. So I've been told.
Yeah. You have some oddities.
I do indeed. I do. I mostly keep them hidden until I started this whole podcast thing, or I blasted to the world.
Now they're just fodder. Fodder for the podcast. All right, well, let's conclude, shall we?
We shall.
Jorah is definitely Team Dany, whether he was before or after the letters arrived.
Yeah, he
is now.
He definitely prevented disaster, that's for sure. If not for him, things would have ended pretty poorly when she got back and she and Khal Drogo enjoyed 2 nice cups of the Arbor Red.
Yeah, I did notice, though, that was another problem I had with the assassin's attempt. Because he wasn't offering her a glass of the wine, a taster of the wine. He was offering her the cask to take back home.
Yeah.
It seems like a long shot that she'd be the first person to drink wine out of that thing. Now, maybe the poison was slow acting. Maybe True. It was like, arsenic, where it's drinking a lot of it is going to...
Yeah.
She's also pregnant. She might not have a taste for wine.
Oh, right yeah.
Khal Drogo. I mean, she probably wasn't getting a lot of medical advice saying don't drink wine. Gets it.
It seems like a solid assumption there. Yeah.
But... My vision of this is that she takes it back, she leaves it aside, she calls for a servant to bring her and Khal Drogo a big goblet of this new wine she just got. She's very excited, and as the servant brings it, they fall over dead.
I feel like I probably shouldn't finish this wine.
Yeah, and that was my other question actually. So would you? So Bayan Viserys, the captain of the caravan, gave Dany all of the wine merchant's wine.
Right, I know where you're going with this.
Now, it's pretty clear that at least one barrel was poisonous.
Yeah.
Not sure I would trust
That's
this
when you
kid.
need a taster, a professional taster to you
Yeah,
drink it first.
heck
How do you feel now? I'm just picturing, him with all his wares and stuff, and he's like, "Now where did I put that Dany cask? It's one of these
Skull
two."
and crossbones on it.
But Dany does get her wish. They're going back to Westeros.
Yes, they are.
So, although
Yes, they are. But I think you've raised a good point. I mean, Drogo is so angry that he's going to Westeros to do some serious damage, not just to win the throne back.
yeah,
He's going to get 8 pounds of flesh and scarf it all down.
that's right. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that's that's the Dothraki way anyway. They're not like gentle when they conquer another group of people.
No.
So
No. Not benevolent conquerors.
Yeah.
No. So the small council's attempt backfired, or did it?
right.
Certainly, Peter Baelish exactly predicted this outcome.
Yep. And Drogo's rage fits very well into Varys and Illyrio's plans that they mentioned in the dungeon.
Yeah. So again, full marks. If they're playing this game at that level, they're playing it at a higher level than Ned Stark.
Yeah.
All right. Well, as always, you can reach out to us at ghost.harrenhal@gmail.com. You can follow us at Twitter. You can follow us on Twitter at Ghost Harrenhal. We're on Facebook, Instagram, and now YouTube.
Yep. And just because our review giveaway is over doesn't mean that you can't review us. So if you wouldn't mind going out and leaving us a review at Apple Podcasts or anywhere that you can leave a review, we would very much appreciate it.
Well, thank you for listening.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.